Final season of Star Trek Discovery, now officially the longest running Star Trek show. How do you feel about that, by the way? And I mean, of course, in terms of how long it was on from the first to the last episode, not the total amount of episodes. Before you have a go at me in the comments, don't worry about that. And I'm going to talk a lot about this finale of Star Trek Discovery because I've got some feelings on this one. So if you enjoyed this episode, I'm glad that you did. Let's just get that out of the way. Now, before I get into the episode too much, I just want to talk about my expectations because I don't know what I was expecting for the last few scenes or how they would tie this all up. But man, that was a Return of the King level amount of endings, wasn't it? I mean, this was an episode that was nearly an hour and a half, but that was a lot of endings. And I won't get into the spoiler stuff straight away, but if you want to watch this, you probably have already. And if you don't want to watch it, you probably never will. But let's get it out of the way first of all. This episode had a lot, and I mean a lot, to fit in. And it tried with all those endings, which I'm going to get to. It ties up the Season 5 arc, it ties up the Discovery storyline well into the future and beyond. We find out who Kovic actually is. And did you see it coming? Because it goes all the way to setting up the short trek episode Calypso. And yeah, I didn't see that one coming either. The episode had a lot of weight and it has a lot to tie up for 9 episodes of story that they've set up for the season so far. Plus, the entire Discovery season run itself, and being a final Trek episode, man, that's a lot of weight to carry. And finales for Trek are hit and miss, let's be honest. For All Good Things is probably considered the standard, with Endgame probably being the second, at least for me. And for a Discovery finale, this episode gave me exactly what I expected when it came to the overall Season 5 story arc with the progenitors and their technology, and I kind of figured this was the way that they were going to tie that all up. But after that, this episode keeps going, and we get all of these long scenes that feel like they should have been the final scene but aren't. And we get quite a few, and I'm going to get to that. But first of all, as always, I'm Al. This is The Geek in Review. Thanks for taking the time to choose to watch this channel. I really appreciate it, and if you haven't done it already, subscribe and leave a like if you make it all the way to the end.
Let's fly.
So let's get into the episode and what happened first of all. Michael and Maul are trapped in the progenitor's magic box, and Michael wakes up in the volume. And I get it's a kind of Garden of Eden, Wizard of Oz, Yellow Brick Road kind of vibe. And where is she exactly? Another planet, another dimension. It's kind of like the TARDIS, but a little less interesting. But she gets transported to a desolate world, so I guess these portals that were all around her were actually portals after all. And if you remember last week, some Breen and Maul went in ahead of her, so she runs into one of them, and they get into one of the first of many fights in this episode. And man, at certain points I did think, did Zack Snyder direct this? Because there's a lot of slow motion. Anyway, she manages to get back to the Yellow Brick Road in the volume and finds an injured Maul, who, of course, she saves. And saves her why? Because, you know, Maul's probably going to try and betray her, and spoiler alert, that does happen later on. The writers create a stalemate between these two characters, and there's absolutely no tension. And they're forced to work together. Why? Does anyone care at this point? And this is all before the credits. And the final time you're going to see the list of like 20 producers' names. Like, seriously, why do they need that many? They actually kind of comment about it in this later on, and I'm going to get to that. But I mean, what do they do and how much are they getting paid? That's what I always wonder. Michael and Maul finally talk about how they're going to use this technology once they find it. And finally, I mean, after 10 weeks, they've barely talked about what they're going to do and the repercussions for this. And it lasts all of about 30 seconds. Before Michael finally goes back and references the fact that she's seen the future, which the writers seem to have forgotten about for the last 5 episodes. Of course, they get into a fight, and man, that is some CGI, that's all I'm going to say. It kind of makes you appreciate what the MCU can do. That's all I'm going to say on that. And this fight goes jumping between worlds and worlds, but while this is going on, outside in the real world, Discovery is battling that fucking huge Breen ship that's been a threat all season, but now sort of isn't because it's the finale. And of course, they've got to avoid the Breen and a flammable nebula, which is a great Star Trek setup, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. Book decides to leave in a shuttle for some reason to give him something to do, but there's a high risk of radiation poisoning, so guess who's going with him? Of course it's going to be Colbert. And the reason that they give for Colbert going with him is based on his intuition that he's going to have something to do on this mission. And they bring back his whole life-changing quest thing, which apparently this is how it's all going to end. And yeah, the writers kind of forgot about that in the last 3 or 4 episodes as well, didn't they? And all this is happening while the fight is going on, i.e. the space battle, that we don't really see a lot of, which I thought was odd for a finale. Meanwhile, back in the magic portal box, Michael asks Maul to trust her, which of course she does, and the two work together to solve the final clue. Or is it? Because there's literally final pieces to the puzzle, and yeah, the writing's been a little bit heavy-handed there. Now, going back a little bit, as I mentioned a minute ago, we don't really see a lot of this big, huge final space battle. But they want to use the old Star Trek manoeuvre of setting the nebula on fire in order to incinerate the bad guys. So yeah, classic Trek trope, I'll give them that. I kind of liked it. I know I'm shocked about that as well. Back at Starfleet Command, Admiral Vance, Nan and Saru talk about what to do next, with Saru volunteering trying to bring peace to the Breen to whatever this situation now is, I don't really know. And they're going to use the new Pathfinder drive, the one they mentioned at the start of the season that you probably forgot about as well. And talking about bad CGI, yeah, it doesn't look great, it just looks like slightly faster warp. Quantum slipstream it is not, put it that way. Anyway, they manage to intercept the Breen fleet, and Saru talks to them quite a bit. And this goes on all too long, and I'm going to talk about this later on. But the action's all kicking off back in the magic portal box, with Maul, of course, betraying Michael, and she brings back Locke's corpse and leaves him there to solve the final piece of the puzzle and resurrect him, I guess. And Maul gets control of the tech, but it's kind of not entirely clear what happens. It starts drawing power from the black holes. It gets to do its big flyby manoeuvre, which was meh. Anyway, meanwhile, in the shuttle, Book and Colbert, of course, Colbert has the answer to solve the problem that they need that's based on a feeling. And who is this guy now? Just Doctor Who? That's all I was thinking. Like, this seemed so weird and detached from everything else. Like, seriously, how does this fit into anything, and how does it make any sense? Well, back in the whole progenitor portal tech, Maul is stuck in the technology, I guess. Again, they don't really explain what's going on. And of course, she meets one of the progenitors, and I wondered if they were going to bring them back, but of course they can, so of course they would. And yeah, the makeup is different. I did expect that. It's been over 30 years since that Next Generation episode. And the way they explain how the progenitor exists is it's just a sort of digital copy of her. I mean, all the progenitors are dead. So it's basically, she's the Microsoft paperclip for life-creating technology. But with her help, Michael manages to stop whatever Maul was doing that he didn't really explain anyway. And it turns out that the progenitors can bring back the dead, but they don't have their memories, so it's not sort of the same person. And there's a whole bunch of rules, and it turns out the progenitors' technology isn't actually theirs in the first place. And this is where the writing completely goes off the rails, because the progenitors say that they found the technology and started looking for who created them, but then you've got to wonder who created that race. So what is it, our creators at that point? That's too many creators. That's like the number of producers on this show. And for a moment, I thought this was some sort of meta commentary on the show itself that someone had snuck in. Let me know what you think about that, because it kind of did blow my mind a little bit, but I don't think anyone's that sort of cheeky to get away with that or put it in the script. Michael now has the power of creation, and a very dull conversation between her and the progenitors with the action that's going on outside on the Discovery. And the action doesn't make any sense either, with Adira having to come up with a plan to separate the ship just to give them something to do this episode, so they can jump the Breen ship into a distant part of the galaxy and just leave them at the galactic barrier. But remember, this Breen ship is like 4 or 5 times the size of a starbase, but I will say the bit where they jumped it away did look cool. It's just a pity we didn't get better action sequences in this finale. It also would have been nice to see what happened when it arrived at the other end, but anyway, don't worry about it. If they were going to get into any more history of the progenitors, and Michael does have a little bit of another 30-second chat about their plan from the chase and how that all started and what was implemented, but it is only a 30-second thing, and that's a theme of this finale, is they don't really focus on things that much. But rather than try and master this new power and technology, Michael is of course worried about her ship and her crew, and uses her new god mode to do what Neo in the Matrix could only dream of. So Michael and Maul make it back to the ship, and Michael is now, I guess, a kind of space Jesus. And the crew are all back together, and the good guys have this forbidden technology. But remember, Locke's still dead. Did you realise that? They just left his body in the portal. I bet you'd forgotten about that, because they don't bring it up, but I'm gonna. And Michael decides this technology should be destroyed because it's too dangerous, which everyone sort of is against, and they have a debate about how the technology should be used. And it's sad that it took us to the final episode for this to happen. Anyway, they shoot the technology off to the black hole, so I guess the whole quest was for nothing after all. And that's kind of it. That's the season 5 story arc, the big one for the finale of Star Trek Discovery tied up. And that's how you wrap it up, I guess. Back at Starfleet HQ, Book checks in on Maul like, Locke's still dead. They don't mention it. No one's mentioning it. Did you forget about it again? Did you think that was really odd? Because I kind of did. We see Kovic one final time and get a big reveal about who he actually is, and it does kind of change how you look at this character, but I'll get to that in a minute, because thank God the Red Directive is finally closed. And did you also forget about that? Did you? Because they hadn't mentioned Red Directives in a few weeks. But anyway, the big reveal is Kovic is Agent Daniels from the Enterprise. Remember him? The time agent from the future who helped Archer on his adventures. Remember the Time War? Man, they could have done so much with Kovic if they'd set this up. It would have been a lot more interesting, but that's for another video. And this is where the Lord of the Rings ending starts. I mean, at Saru's wedding, without setting up the Starfleet Academy show, really on his own, and man, it's kind of obvious that this scene was shot later on, because David Oyelowo looks totally different. And this is the first in many endings that we get. I mean, I know you could count the wedding, but that's just kind of wrapping it up. So Book and Michael say their goodbyes, and this scene is long. I mean, it felt like this was going to be the original planned ending of the show, and they just had to reshoot it. But I guess that's not the case, because there's more beyond this. With a post-disco Michael, a lot older and retired, now living with Book, about 35 to 40 years in the future, and I'll explain that reasoning in a second. But what I will say is, the makeup on these two looked really good. I mean, that was better than All Good Things, wasn't it? I mean, the makeup on that wasn't pretty good. It was 30 years ago. Let me know what you think. And it's now Admiral Burnham, and it turns out they have a son in Starfleet, sitting there watching going, alright, okay, so this is the ending? You know, I was hoping Riker was going to shout holodeck off or end program. That's an Enterprise joke. Like and subscribe. And then it suddenly struck me, this show ended the way it begun with the two-parter all those years ago, with it being solely focused on Michael Burnham. And this still isn't the final ending to the finale yet. And after this whole scene with Michael and Book, we meet their son who's just become a captain in Starfleet. So that's why I'd guess it's about 35 to 40 years in the future, because that's how sort of average age captains tend to be. And at this point, I was just thinking, what's happening with everyone else? What happened to Tilly and Saru and Rayner and all those other people? What about Detmer and Owo? Because they haven't been mentioned in the episode so far. Did you realise that at this point? Let me know. And then we get another scene that feels like it should be a final scene, with Michael and her son on her way to launch Discovery on its final mission. So Admiral Burnham is up for one last trip. But like the whole book on the beach scene, the whole shuttle scene felt really long and unnecessary, and it just felt like Michael Burnham was just giving speech after speech in these final extended scenes. So Michael goes back and we see Discovery getting transformed back into its original version, i.e. before it arrived in the future. So Michael goes on board and remembers Zora and the sphere data. Of course you don't, it's never really get brought up throughout the season or developed all the way through the series as a whole. But what they are doing here is setting up the short trek Calypso, which, man, I never thought they would do. Do you remember Calypso? So Michael ends up taking Discovery to the nebula because, well, it's a red directive, which means Michael gives another speech. And then when she's on the bridge, we get this weird kind of Lost type finale where she imagines herself hugging all the crew members. And finally, Olo and Detmer show back up. But yeah, that's it. The final episode of Discovery sets up the short trek Calypso, which isn't really going to go anywhere, at least as far as we're aware so far. But how did you guys feel about this finale? I want to know, let me know what you think in the comments below. I did think for the overall season 5 story arc, it was kind of fulfilling. I guess if this hadn't been the Discovery finale, I probably would a little bit kinder on it. But you know, the progenitors technology, this episode kind of wanted to be 2001, but it didn't really pull it off. Another thing that bothered me, as I said, none of the bridge action scenes worked, and I don't know why they done those extended Saru talking scenes. I don't know if they were added in or this was just part of the original episode before it was announced this was the season finale. But it was really painfully boring, and what a terrible send-off for Doug Jones and a fan favourite character Saru. And as I mentioned a few times, where were Owo and Detmer? They vanished completely this season round about the midpoint, and then they didn't really get referenced or brought back after that. But yet, when Michael has her big fantasy scene at the end, she imagines hugging them, but not the two new crew members that replaced them for the rest of the seasons. And let's be honest, Discovery has completely mismanaged its supporting cast of characters in the fact that they've never done anything rather than give them trauma trek. And everyone says this in every review because it's absolutely true, and it pisses off even the biggest Discovery fanboys and girls and anyone else that they didn't do more with the opportunities that they had to tell stories with these characters. But what kind of bothered me as well was Michael's speeches, the one she gave to Maul, the one she gave to her son, talking about everything all being about faith, when that's kind of the whole opposite of the Star Trek deal. And yeah, when you look back at For All Good Things or The Last Generation, the last episode of Picard, I guess that's how you do a Star Trek send-off, especially focusing on The Last Generation for a moment, because the final scene is brilliant. It rewards the fans, and you see the characters interact on a level that you always wanted to. And more, better than that, it feels completely naturalistic. Whereas they're all hugging each other, like I said, it reminded me of the final scenes of the episode of Lost. And these people work together. Remember, this is their job. I know it's the whole family thing and whatever, and I get that, and that's fine. But yeah, Star Trek Discovery has always leaned hard more into emotion than fact, and I guess you kind of couldn't expect anything less from the finale. Now let's get to the Kovic reveal, because did anyone else think he was going to say he was Captain Sisko for a minute? Because I kind of really did. Like, I thought that's what they were going to do. I thought the writing's that bad, they're going to say Sisko, and that's going to piss people off. I like what they've done with Daniels, though. It was actually showed that it was kind of thoughtful, and I wonder if it was planned out. I don't think it was, because they probably would have done more setup, and again, it would have been such a better opportunity for storytelling in the Kovic character. But whatever, it was fine. But obviously, the big gripe that I have, and a lot of people are going to have with this episode, is all those final scenes that we got. I mean, there was just so many that were so long, and they were entirely Michael Burnham focused. We don't get any idea what happened to Saru, Tilly, Rayner, Adira, Jet, you name it. They were all left out, because the writers for this show have always had the issue that Michael Burnham is the main character, and that's been the problem with Star Trek Discovery since season 1. It doesn't matter if it's Michael Burnham or Commander William Riker, you can't tell a Star Trek story from one character's point of view, because it totally hampers and defeats the whole object in the way that Star Trek is told as a story. And I think that's what has always held this season back and was what's always caused the issues and lack of focus when it comes to anyone else other than Michael. But one thing I was surprised about in this episode, there was no clear setup to what we're going to get with the whole Starfleet Academy show, other than that little mention of Tilly. We don't even know if Tilly is going to be in it. I mean, imagine she might be a recurring character, they sort of bring her in at the start and the end, or she could be a regular. At this point, we've only had Holly Hunter announced, but we're probably going to get more announced later on this year, I would expect. But yeah, the whole season did lack the opportunity to set that show up. So I guess at the point that Star Trek Discovery was filmed, because this has been filmed and wrapped for over a year, they hadn't started developing the Starfleet Academy show. But what do you guys think? What are we going to get for Starfleet Academy, and what would you like to see? Let me know in the comments below. While this might not stand up for everyone as a classic Trek final episode, there are going to be some Star Trek fans out there who absolutely love how this ended and are excited about the possibility and future of Star Trek and future of Discovery tie-ins. We've got Section 31 coming, we've got the Starfleet Academy show coming, and we've got a new prequel film coming, so I wonder how this is all going to tie in together, or how it's not, which I think is more likely to be the case. But one way or another, we've reached the end of the road for Star Trek Discovery, and man, have I got some thoughts overall from seasons 1 to 5, and I'm going to do a separate video on that, and I might do a live stream as well. If you'd like me to do a live stream, let me know in the comments below, and I might see if I can fit it in over the weekend. But as always, I want to know what you guys think. What did you think of season 5? What did you think of the finale? What did you think of all the endings? And hell, what did you think of Discovery overall as well? I'm really interested to see how this show is going to get looked back on in 5 to 10 years, and what the actors, the cast, and the crew are going to say, and what we're going to find out about what went on behind the scenes as well. Because man, there was some wild stuff when it came to Discovery, but again, that's for another video. If you've made it this far, as always, you should have hit subscribe by now, and leave a like as well. And my name's Al, thanks for watching.